The laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Not a polite one. Not a nervous one. A sharp, incredulous sound that sliced clean through the silence of the boardroom. Every head snapped in my direction. My sister froze at the far end of the table, her manicured fingers still resting on the leather folder in front of her like she'd just fired a loaded weapon and hadn't expected it to echo. "Your services are no longer required," she said again, slower this time, louder, as if repetition could turn stupidity into authority. "You'll clear out your office by tomorrow morning." There it was. The execution. The moment she'd rehearsed in her mirror for years. I looked around the table, at the men and women who suddenly found the grain of the mahogany table fascinating. People who had shaken my hand last week. People whose bonuses existed because I'd dragged half our revenue across finish lines they couldn't even see. No one spoke. Of course they didn't. I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands and smiled. "Is that all?" I asked. A flicker of irritation crossed her face. Not anger, something worse. Uncertainty. "Yes," she said tightly. "That will be all." She didn't even look at me after that. She flipped the page of her agenda and started talking about branding initiatives and office renovations like she hadn't just tried to erase me from a company I helped build with my bare hands. I stood. Chairs creaked. Someone cleared their throat. I nodded once to the board, polite, professional, composed, and walked out. The door closed behind me with a soft, respectful click. It was the quietest betrayal I'd ever heard. The hallway smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and expensive cologne. The kind of hallway that exists only in buildings where power lives comfortably. My heels echoed as I walked toward my corner office. The one I'd earned through years of late nights, hostile negotiations, and fixing problems no one else could solve. My assistant looked up the moment she saw my face. She didn't ask if something was wrong. She already knew. "What happened?" she whispered, standing halfway out of her chair. I closed the door behind me and let the silence stretch just long enough to make it real. "She fired me." Her mouth fell open. "She can't do that," she said automatically. "Without you this place would." "She can," I replied calmly. And she did. I sat down, exhaled once, and allowed myself exactly 3 seconds of disbelief before something else slid into place. Calm, clean, cold. The kind that shows up when a plan finally stops being theoretical. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a slim leather folder I'd kept hidden beneath old notebooks and forgotten chargers. I placed it gently on the desk. My assistant stared at it. "Do you remember," I said slowly, "that restructuring I pushed through years ago? The one everyone thought was just another efficiency tweak." Her eyes widened. "The consulting entity," she whispered. "Your private firm." I smiled. "Exactly." Inside that folder were contracts, amendments, signatures, approvals. Every major client, every revenue stream that actually mattered, all legally mine. I hadn't built a bomb. I'd built an exit. And my sister had just lit the fuse herself. Outside my office window, the city kept moving. Traffic, people, money. Inside, I started to laugh again. This time quietly, because she thought she'd won. And she had no idea she'd just fired the only thing keeping her empire alive. Long before the boardroom. Long before the glass walls and polished tables. Long before my sister learned how to smile like a weapon. She had already won. I grew up in a house where praise moved in one direction, and expectations moved in the other. My sister, let's call her Maribel, was born first, beautiful and effortless in the way some people seem to arrive already finished. Teachers adored her. Neighbors remembered her name. She had a laugh that filled rooms and a confidence that never cracked, even when it should have. I was the quiet one, the fixer. The girl who noticed patterns and problems and solved them before anyone realized they existed. At dinner, Maribel talked. I listened. At school events, Maribel sparkled. I took notes. At family gatherings, people asked her about her future. They asked me to pass the bread. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" My mother would say, not cruelly, almost thoughtfully, as if I were a puzzle missing a piece she couldn't quite locate. What no one noticed was that while Maribel collected applause, I collected leverage. I learned early that charm gets attention, but competence gets control. And control lasts longer. When we joined the family company, the pattern continued, just with better furniture. The business had been started by our grandfather in a drafty warehouse decades earlier. By the time we were adults, it had grown into a respected regional operation with national ambitions. Maribel took the visible role. I took the functional one. She handled appearances. I handled outcomes. She attended conferences and posed for photos. I negotiated contracts in windowless rooms where the air smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. She talked vision. I built systems. Whenever a deal closed, Maribel presented it. Whenever a deal stalled, I was called in quietly to fix it. And every time I did, I learned something. Who trusted whom? Which clients followed relationships, not brands? Which executives couldn't read a contract past the header? Especially within our own company. Our father, brilliant in his era, outdated in ours, believed leadership was about optics. He liked decisiveness. He liked tradition. He liked being agreed with. Maribel did all three beautifully. I asked questions. That made me difficult. Let's not overcomplicate things, he'd say whenever I proposed restructuring or modernization. What's working doesn't need fixing. What he meant was, what you're suggesting threatens the hierarchy. And hierarchies, I learned, are allergic to truth. The warning signs came years before Maribel ever sat in the CEO chair. I noticed how she took credit a little faster each quarter. How her presentations increasingly used my numbers without my name. How board members praised her for growth strategies I had personally engineered. Once, after a particularly brutal negotiation saved a major account from walking, I overheard Maribel laughing with a board member in the hallway. She's great with details, Maribel said casually. But I'm the one who keeps the big picture together. I stood just out of sight, my hand resting against the cool wall. That was the moment I stopped assuming fairness was coming. That was the moment I stopped reacting and started planning. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't demand recognition. I did something far more dangerous. I prepared. Quietly. Legally. Methodically. I hired my own attorney, not through the company, not through family channels. Someone sharp. Someone invisible. Together, we created what looked like a harmless consulting structure. A separate entity that technically allowed me to negotiate directly with clients for efficiency. On paper, it was boring. In practice, it was brilliant. Clients didn't object. They trusted me. The board approved it without reading past the first page. Our father signed because revenue increased. And Maribel? Maribel was too busy imagining her future office. Over time, contracts shifted. Language changed. Ownership clarified itself. Not loudly. Not obviously. Just enough. By the time succession whispers began circulating, the foundation was already laid. They thought they were promoting me sideways. They thought I'd stay grateful. They thought wrong. When Maribel was officially named the next CEO, she hugged me tightly in front of everyone. "We'll make such a great team," she said. I smiled back. I already knew how this would end. I just didn't expect her to pull the trigger so quickly, or so publicly, or without reading the fine print. And that mistake? That was about to cost her everything. I was halfway through emptying my desk when the first call came in. I'd chosen the early hour on purpose. Before the office filled, before whispers turned into theater. The building was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every sound feel accusatory. Cardboard boxes. The scrape of tape. The soft hum of the HVAC system pretending nothing had happened. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the name and smiled. One of our biggest clients. I answered calmly. Too calmly. "Good morning," I said. There was a pause on the other end. Then confusion. "I just received an email," the voice said slowly. "From your sister. She says she's my new point of contact." I sealed the box and sat on the edge of my desk. "Yes," I replied. "There have been some changes internally." Another pause. "But our agreement is with your firm," she said. "Not the family company." I closed my eyes for a moment. There it was. The first crack. "You're absolutely right," I said gently. Your contract is with my consulting group. That hasn't changed. Silence. Then, does she know that? I smiled. I don't believe she's reviewed the contracts yet. A quiet laugh on the other end. Not unkind, relieved. We signed because of you, she said. Not the brand. Please clarify things before this turns messy. I'll handle it, I promised. When I hung up, my hands weren't shaking. They were steady. That's how I knew the plan was working. The second call came before I'd finished packing my books. The third came while I was labeling a box. By the fourth, I stopped answering and started taking notes. Same concern. Same confusion. Same conclusion. They didn't want her. They wanted me. By the time the office started filling with employees pretending not to stare, my phone lit up with a name I'd been expecting. Maribel. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Then I answered. Hello. Where are the client files? She demanded. No griting. No pretense. Just panic wrapped in authority. They're where they've always been, I said. Organized. Labeled. Accessible. That's not what I mean, she snapped. Why are clients saying they won't work with us? I leaned against the window and watched people arrive, coffee in hand, unaware that the ground beneath them was already shifting. They're exercising their contractual rights. What rights? Her voice rose. What are you talking about? I imagined her in her new office. Fresh paint, expensive chair, power she didn't yet understand. Check the contract headers, I said evenly. The service provider is my firm. Your company is listed as fulfillment only. The silence was immediate. Heavy. Deafening. You can't do this, she finally said. I laughed. Softly. Honestly. I already did, I replied. Years ago. With approval. With signatures. With legal review. This is sabotage, she hissed. No, I said. This is business. You wanted the title. Congratulations. But the relationships, the trust, the revenue, that was always mine. She hung up on me. It felt satisfying. My assistant appeared at the door not long after, holding a box of her own. I quit, she said brightly. HR didn't even argue. I told them I was joining your firm. For the first time since the boardroom, something shifted in my chest. This wasn't just retaliation. This was momentum. By evening, I was sitting at my dining table surrounded by notebooks, legal pads, and cold takeout. I had clients. I had contracts. I had people texting me from inside the company, quietly asking if I was hiring. What I didn't have was infrastructure. Yet. I made calls. Promised timelines I intended to meet. Signed agreements I'd only just finished drafting. I built the airplane mid-flight and prayed the laws of physics were feeling generous. Then another message came through. An emergency board meeting. My presence required. I laughed out loud. Required. They fired me in the morning. By nightfall, they needed me back. I typed one sentence in response. My attorney will attend. The phone rang immediately. I didn't answer. I sat back and exhaled. The game had changed. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting to my sister's moves. She was reacting to mine. The counteroffer arrived wrapped in desperation. Not formally at first. Not clean. Not confident. It came as a late-night voicemail from a board member, who suddenly remembered my number after pretending for years that I was interchangeable. We'd like to explore options, he said carefully, as if the word itself might explode. There's been some misunderstanding. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. If they wanted me, they'd have to be brave enough to put it in writing. They were. By morning, my attorney forwarded a document so thick it could have doubled as a doorstop. Guaranteed revenue. Long-term commitment. Performance bonuses stacked like a bribe someone hoped I wouldn't notice. They wanted my company back under their roof. They wanted my clients back under their logo. They wanted control, without admitting they'd already lost it. I laughed because of course they did. And then I did something that surprised even me. I hesitated. Running my own company was exhilarating, terrifying, exhausting. Every decision landed on my desk. Every mistake echoed louder. I traded one kind of pressure for another, and I loved it. But the offer wasn't insulting. It was strategic. Too strategic. "You're asking for more than money," my attorney said after reviewing my draft response. "You're asking for leverage." "I'm asking for balance," I corrected. "I'm done being disposable." She studied me for a moment. "Be honest. Is this about business? Or your sister?" "Both." And that's when my sister finally went quiet long enough to do something unpredictable. She asked to meet. Just the two of us. No board. No lawyers. No audience. A neutral coffee shop halfway between our offices. Like we were divorcing adults negotiating custody of a very angry child. I almost said no. Almost. She was already there when I arrived, stirring a cup she hadn't touched. "You look tired," she said. "Building something real will do that," I replied. "You should try it sometime." Normally, that would have sparked a fight. This time she ignored it. "I've been thinking," she said, "about why you set all this up." I raised an eyebrow. "Buinliging me." "You never trusted us," she said flatly. "Not me. Not Dad. Not the board." I considered that. "Trust isn't a birthright," I said. "It's earned. You took credit for my work. He overlooked my contributions. What exactly was I supposed to rely on?" She flinched just slightly. "We're family," she said. "And that," I replied, "is why this exploded." Family blurred boundaries. Excused behavior. Punished competence if it made someone else uncomfortable. She leaned forward. "You'd burn the whole company down just to prove a point." That one landed. Because it was close enough to hurt. "I didn't burn anything down," I said quietly. "You fired me. I just refused to go down with the building." We stared at each other. Two women raised in the same house. Taught the same values. Given wildly different permissions. "So what happens now?" she asked. That was the question, wasn't it? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I didn't want her job. I wanted freedom. And I already had it. That afternoon, I sent my counterproposal. Fair. Firm. Unapologetic. Increased compensation. Equity. Independence preserved. Take it, or watch your company hemorrhage quietly while pretending it's fine. They accepted within hours. Not because they wanted to. Because they had no choice. That night, I sat alone in my temporary office. Lights low, city glowing outside the windows. My phone buzzed. A message from my sister. "This isn't over." I smiled. She was right. It wasn't. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was ready. 3 months after my sister fired me, I stood in the lobby of a company that didn't exist a season earlier, and signed a contract that changed everything. The glass doors closed behind me with a soft, confident hush. The kind of sound only new buildings make. Fresh paint. Clean lines. No ghosts. "This puts you ahead of schedule," the client said, sliding the folder across the table. "Frankly, we expected chaos." I smiled. So did everyone else. They shook my hand like they meant it. That deal tipped us over the line, into territory my old company had never reached without my help. And now, we did it without the politics. Without the compromises. Without asking permission. When I returned to our headquarters, a renovated industrial space with exposed brick and wide windows, the team was already buzzing. People moved with purpose. Whiteboards filled and erased in cycles. Laughter floated between desks. This wasn't borrowed power. This was earned. The official announcement came a week later. The family company would be outsourcing its core operations to my firm. I didn't attend the internal meeting. I didn't need to. I heard enough from the people still inside. Apparently, my sister had fought it to the end. Apparently, the board had given her a choice. Accept the partnership, or step aside. She stayed. Barely. That night, I sat in my office long after everyone left, watching the city lights flicker like a living thing. I thought about everything I'd poured into a company that never planned to choose me. And how, in trying to discard me, they'd finally set me free. The lunch with my father came later. He looked older. Smaller. Less certain. I should have made you leader years ago, he said, staring into his glass. I mistook obedience for capability. I didn't gloat. I didn't forgive him either. But I listened. When he floated the idea of me returning, of reshuffling roles, of my sister stepping aside, I nearly laughed. I already have a company, I said gently. And for the first time it's mine. He nodded. I think in that moment he finally understood. Months passed. Growth stabilized. Systems hardened. The chaos turned into rhythm. My sister and I learned how to exist in the same industry, without tearing it apart. Not friends. Not enemies. Professionals with shared history and separate power. And that was enough. On a quiet evening, I stood outside our building and looked up at the illuminated sign. My name wasn't on it. My legacy was. She fired me to feel powerful. Instead, she gave me something better. Control. And that's why I laughed. Because sometimes the moment someone thinks they've ended your story is exactly when you start writing the chapter that matters most. Please click the subscribe button, like, share, and comment. This will encourage me to make more interesting stories. Also, let's know where you are watching from. Thank you and see you in the next story.